All right, what is up, peeps? We out here for Legends Find a Way podcast, episode number 20, with our special guest today, Kristin Cattafesta. Kristin, how are you today?
Doing great. Hi, everyone.
And my apologies, peeps. So for this podcast, Kristin just got back from a workout, and that's on me. So she's going to be just chatting in from the audio today, but I highly recommend listening to all the things she has to say because she's not only been a professional coach for 16 years, but has done a million things in the business world and equally as much on her own personal growth and development. We literally just got talking about her recent 52 book challenge. Kristin, can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think that's really neat the way that you kind of did it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Boston College for my undergrad, and every year I see a bunch of my fellow graduates posting this 52 book challenge that they complete. And last December, a couple of my alumni friends have reached out and said, "Hey, will you do this 52 book challenge with us next year?" And normally I'm spending a lot of time reading books that my clients need and reading books about the business world. And I said, wow, I really want to do this, but I don't want to just read business books. I want to like kind of get back to my roots and read stuff that's interesting. So 2020, I spent the year reading 52 books, and I just finished a couple weeks ago, and it's been an amazing journey of reading. The first book was about love relationships, and there were books about decorating your home in the fashion of Sweden, and there were books about racism and how I can be a better white person in America, and just wonderful books that I've read all throughout the year.
Right. And I think just for me personally, I'm going to give you a little shake. 52 books is freaking epic. That's like one a week, obviously, peeps. And that's a real commitment. And I know that for you, I think the really cool thing, and it sounded like that was like big for you, was that you didn't read any business books, which is something that like you obviously you're a business professional, you've been doing this stuff for a while. So to not do that and to follow these other areas and pursuits and desires that you have for your heart, I think that's really cool. And I know that you said that you did something really neat afterwards and you went back and you like found some special excerpts from each one.
Yeah, so I highly recommend this to anybody who's doing it. I don't know if any of you are like me, but I go through and I highlight my favorite things in every book I read. And I did that for this challenge. And then I went back and picked one, statement or a couple sentences that I liked from each book. And I put it up on a whiteboard in my office. Obviously, I had some extra time this year with the pandemic. So I put all these quotes and sayings from every book up on this whiteboard. And now I've gotten to look back and really kind of see what my heart was telling me as I read through it, see the things that were standing out to me in March and April as the pandemic was beginning, and then what's standing out to me now as the year is coming to the close. And it's just a really great way to kind of see what your mind and your spirit is kind of thinking about in the course of a year, because oftentimes your heart, your spirit is drawn to different words on paper when you're kind of by yourself reflecting than they might be when you're busy in the day-to-day. So I'm super grateful that I did that. I'm really excited to kind of maybe next year do it again, maybe not with 52, but keep this kind of pulling the messages out and reflecting on them and seeing where my life is at the moment.
Yeah, that is super neat. And I have not met anyone that's done that before. I know for me, I always like will underline stuff, circle it, and come back to it. But I think that taking it out of the book and putting it up and then letting that become its own book or tale or story or anecdote in a way, or like lens, like we talked about. My question to you is like, what were some of the overarching themes that you saw and that you found for yourself in those words and those excerpts this year?
Yeah, so many of them. I mean, this year's been so different in so many ways. It's funny, I'm the 20th guest on your podcast. It's 2020. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all the themes of this year. I think for me, there's like always an undercurrent of love and how can I just be love in the world? And I think I'm drawn to a lot of personal development books that help me be a better, kinder person. So I think there were a lot of messages that stood out to me that just kind of make my heart warm when I read them and make me think about the person I want to be from a loving kindness, like warmth perspective. I think as the year went on, there were some really good teachable moments in these books too, as far as like how I want to live my life with other people, like being in service with other people. I'm huge about servant leadership, and it's interesting how so many of the messages that popped up were about family, community, service, kind of giving back. And That was a major theme. And then I think the last theme was definitely around people living their life as their authentic self. And that's something that as I get older and years go by, I'm still learning how to do that more and more every day. And it was interesting to see the messages that I really kind of circled where someone was being authentically them in such a vulnerable way. And I hope that's something I can continue to learn to be and try to be and as I continue to explore this world and my life.
I love that. And I definitely can tell you from my perspective, as far as vulnerable and authentic, both of those were present in that first conversation that we had all the way back when. And, just how fast we connected and communicated and got to know one another because of that, because of that open communication channel that each of us wanted to create for one another to like feel in that safe space and really get to know one another faster. So I can vouch for you on that. And I think that's just super cool. And yeah, servant leadership and sharing those messages and going deeper with those messages and really learning to embody those messages. I know it's something that you've been doing, and it's really cool for me. One of the things that really sticks out about you to me is that having done what you're doing for so long at a really high level, the fact that you still are continuously going back as a student to learn more and lean into it harder and become more comfortable with it is something that really inspires the younger generation of coaching, including myself. So I just wanted you to know that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I definitely loved our first conversation. It was almost a year ago or a little over a year ago now.
Crazy.
And it's crazy how much has happened in a year. But I think to your comment about development and like developing yourself, for me, like in my profession, a big part of it has been learning and development for other people. And I always say, like, if I'm not working on myself, how can I get up and teach other people how to work on themselves or be an outlet as a coach for other people? Like, how can I do that if I'm not investing in growing? Because how am I going to be able to like help anyone understand how to grow if I don't know how to grow and grow through stuff that I'm not good at, right? Or stuff that I messed up or failed at or kind of, stepped into by accident, right? And whether that's relationships or work or whatever. So I think for me, I have such an eye on learning every day. Like, what can I learn each day to be better so that I can bring that to the people I work with?
1,000%. I love that. And that's just an absolute gem and needs to be continuously implemented over the course of one's life. And I love that. And for me, like one of the values that I hold dear is leadership, and leadership to me means lead and others will follow. So to your point, you getting up and doing it and serving yourself first in that way first and creating that space and embodying that way of life paves the way for other people to follow. And, I'm going to take a wild guess that is some of the, I can say that is also a value, or to a degree, in your own words, something that you really hold dear to your company, leaders' advice. And you're obviously the chief people officer of your company. So can you explain a little bit of the origin of your company and how you got started in coaching and all this stuff? Because 16 years is quite a while, and I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you say that about kind of the leadership quotes that you were imparting there. I always say, like, so the leader goes, so goes the organization.
There we go.
And I know, I believe you say that in your kind of podcast and talks as well. Um, so yeah, 16 years chief people officer. So 8 years ago, I started my own company. I do global people strategy work mostly for Fortune 100 corporations. I have spent my whole career in the Fortune 100 space. So prior to opening my business, I worked for very large companies in learning and development and culture change work, mergers and acquisitions at one point, really kind of all the facets of the big company space and navigating the big company space. And 8 years ago, I decided that I wanted to try to do it on my own for the primary reason of my health and just finding a way to make sure that there was balance in my life and that I actually was enjoying my life too and not just working the whole time. And honestly, it's the best decision I ever made. A very scary decision to leave everything because corporate can really like suck you in and keep you there with the money and the benefits and all the great stuff that happens there. But for myself, I decided I wanted to see what I could do. I wanted to have like a nonprofit arm and give back more fully. And a big goal I had was I wanted to be healthier and take more time off. So now that I'm 8 years into this company, people strategy work really is advising big companies and helping them actually create strategies that support anything related to people processes. So that could be culture, performance, talent management, learning and development, um, anything related to the people side of the business, like promotions, people, bench succession programs. And as a result of that, I've been an executive coach in that work too for all those years and have been certified a long time. Have coached a lot of people. But yeah, so it's been great. And now I actually get to take, don't tell my clients this, but like 3 to 4 months off a year, which is great. And I don't only travel globally for work now. I do a lot of fun travel for myself and have a much healthier lifestyle. And I'm super grateful that I did it in my 30s and didn't wait until I was too old to be enjoying the world.
I love it. And I love the thing that I think I love the most is just that last portion of you really just deciding that, you know, for me, my health and for who I am as a person and who I want to become, it's important for me to take time for myself. And it sounds like you do plenty of that. And obviously from our previous conversations, you are an adventurer, same as me. So we've both been able to see some really cool things. And I follow your lead in that regard. And
Yeah.
it's super cool. So like, here's my question, because obviously working with Fortune 100 companies, I mean, that's especially to a lot of people that are listening to here. I mean, that's like probably not even something they would even consider doing. So how did that even happen? I'm assuming that's through you working for those companies beforehand with them, like for them actually, versus for being hired by them later. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when I opened my company, I actually remember a thought going through my head. I left corporate America and I took a couple weeks and went to Hawaii to relax and kind of unwind and get in the water and all that good stuff. And I remember sitting there with an acai bowl one morning saying, gosh, I wonder who's going to hire me. Like, is it going to be pizza parlors? Like, is it going to be small businesses? Like, who's going to hire me, when I get back? And what I quickly learned was, my whole career has kind of been in this space. So in college, I interned with a large corporation. I went during school, I was running a leadership program, and we had speakers come in who were alumni. And I met a fabulous speaker. And I kind of said to him one day, I think I want to do what you do, and he was doing at that time some leadership development in the company he was with, and met him. He became like a mentor of mine. They were kind enough to give me an internship at the time, and that kind of opened my eyes to what corporate America could be like. And coming from a super small town, I'd never experienced really any of that. So it was fun to see it. And then I ended up getting my master's degree in org effectiveness and leadership, and really having what I would say to anyone on the phone, like I just have a huge passion around leadership development. And that's been a big thread of my life. And so really Boston College kind of positioned me, and my graduate degree at Columbia kind of positioned me for work in the large company space, but I would never deter anyone who's interested to seek out those opportunities, like whatever path that leads you there. If that's something you're interested in, working for the big companies that kind of make the world go round, I say go for it and find like a mentor or a friend or someone there who can help give you some advice or help you get your resume ready for those spaces. But for me, it's just kind of been where I started and where I continue to spend most of my time. And then on occasion, I still will do projects for small to medium-sized businesses too, which is great.
So freaking cool. And so one thing that I'm super interested in, I'm sure others would be interested in this too, is when it comes to like executive coaching, or when it comes to some of the products that you've created that you found that were really neat, what were some of your favorites that you worked on, or some of the coolest experiences that you've had getting to do that kind of work?
Well, I will tell you, executive coaching has been like a love-hate relationship for me. And I don't know if any of the coaches on the phone feel this way ever, but coaching is tough. And it is tough, 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 tough for so many reasons. I have grown as a coach in so many ways and learned so much about myself as a coach. I will tell you this, like I view myself as a transformational coach. That was a term that was used in my coaching certification a long time ago. And I say transformational because I'm really good at working with people who actually want to put the work into change. So for me, like I tend to gravitate toward high potentials, folks who are seeking out the coaching on their own versus folks who have been assigned to me in
Mm,
coaching environments. And I've had a mix of both in my career. So I've had a lot of people who've come to me because they've had to fix something that their company said, hey, you have to go fix this quality or this behavior that you have. And then I
interesting.
have folks who call me on the phone and can't afford coaching, but would do anything for the coaching. And then I instantly give them free coaching or very discounted coaching because I can tell how much they want it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, what I've learned in 16 years is find the type of coach you are. There's great coaches who give advice and spread wisdom and don't do a lot of tracking or accountability and do a lot of talking. And then there's great coaches who ask a lot of questions, who hold people accountable, who work on the transformation side, who are great at follow up. And I am that coach. I am the one who's going to give you the tough homework. I'm going to ask you the tough questions, and I'm not going to do it for you. Um, so that's kind of been my journey. I don't know if I answered any of your question there,
No,
but
no, no. That was awesome. That's a great place to move this conversation. I love it. I can just hear it in your voice right now. The passion's so real. It's super cool. One of the, we obviously bonded over acai bowls, or they weren't
yes.
even smoothie bowls, so we out here. Here's my question to you, because I think this is a really interesting topic. And as I move on my own journey, and I'm getting around more of those high performing type people. My question to you is, what are your suggestions, or what are the strategies that you've learned through your experience to work with those types of people? Because they can be, we both know, they can be very strong-willed, and sometimes
Yeah.
not always wanting to do what they need to do because they don't think they need to do it. But for you, you have this, which is such an interesting uh, facet, was that obviously in that type of space, you're having some people come to you because they need to fix something, which means they don't really want to be there. And the last thing they want to do is be asked hard questions, right?
Yes.
So what's your strategy to deal with those types of high achievers? Like, how have you learned to work with them? Because I can, yeah, yeah.
So one thing I've definitely fixed over time is my process in coaching and how I approach it. Like, what is my structure? What is my framework? How many conversations am I going to offer in that package? What does the report? So I send out I do an upfront mini 360 survey for anyone who coaches with me, so they can pick 5 to 6 people. And if it's in a corporate setting, I interview their boss, and I also interview their team. And a mini survey goes out, and then we get like an upfront report about the person and any other assessments they've taken. I take all of that. I'm heavily assessment certified, so I take all of those assessments and I kind of do a snapshot for them of what I've learned. And then from there, we select some competencies to anchor to, and that's kind of what we focus on. It's a little bit of what people feedback was given and what they want to work on together. Because as a coach, always remember, if you're not moving their problem, no problem's moving. So if they want to work on something that is different than what you think they should be working on, like help them move their problem first, or they won't do anything. But with the high potentials, I think it's really about your structure and how coordinated you are. And if you're really structured and you can give them the information that they need and leave them the space to kind of grow into the activities or grow into the assignments. Like I always give 2 pretty challenging homework assignments every month for people, and they have to kind of grow into those. So I always say with your highest achievers, like raise the bar and they'll reach up to get it. So like
Mm.
give them something that they can rise up to and let them, they sometimes, I hate to say this, they have some ego in there. So you do have to like kind of support that ego through the journey a bit and know that that comes with them. But I think as long as you're advocating for them and being a support and kind of cultivating their strength, they really appreciate that, and show them short wins every month so that they can really feel like the time is valuable.
That's good stuff right there. There's so much to break down. But my question to you is, with these tough homework assignments, how tough are we talking? Like that's a curious topic, right?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So I do a lot of coaching in or recently in the past few years, I do a handful of coaching in like diversity and inclusion.
Mhm.
And some things that happens quite a bit in that space is that there's really difficult conversations that have to be had. And so someone who's growing in their leadership, let's say in a corporate setting, and there's a tough partnership or team dynamic that they need to resolve, or boss associate relationship that they have with their boss, and there's a problem there. One of the toughest assignments I give people right off the bat is going to have a very difficult discussion. And granted, I arm them with everything we practice, so I'm not sending them out there cold. But I think that I do give some really tough assignments in that regard, where I want them to go fix the problems, like a very challenging relationship, while they're in the coaching environment, so they have the support they need to navigate what else is going to be difficult that comes up for them.
Mhm.
So the assignments, I mean, they're as tough as the person needs to grow. And I don't recommend that for your mid performers. So like folks who are kind of your BC talent, or your kind of middle performing um, players or people who are kind of not at that high performer level or high potential level, like folks who are kind of need a, I don't recommend it for like people who just need a different kind of coaching. But if you're really pushing your top performers, you can push them pretty hard as long as you're giving them the support that you need when they go test that skill out.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot there. And I think one of the things that I love that you mentioned, which it sounds like something that I've learned as well, is that before the way you said it was before that they can fix their the bigger problem, they have to first fix their problem. So if you don't help them fix their problem, they can't fix the bigger problem. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a client not that long ago who came to me, and this person was identified by their company to get some coaching. And they had A, B, and C things that the company wanted them to coach on. And interestingly enough, after I did the interviews and read her assessments and we sat down, I said, what would you like to work on? Before I share with you kind of what the data tells me. And she said, I want to quit my job. And all of a sudden I said, wow, like this company's invested, a handful of months in this person, they want to quit their job. It doesn't matter what other things I try to coach this person on. If I'm not positioning them for their next step in this, like if I'm not helping them like think about that too, we're not going to get anything done. So I had to kind of contract with her to say, okay, well, I understand that. I said, well, how about this? What if you identify 1 to 2 things you think you need for your next career step? And then meanwhile, we're going to go solve these other 3 things that you're currently doing in your current role. And together we'll work on all 5. So you're growing with your current role and you're positioning yourself for the future. So I think as a coach, it's important to contract on what someone really needs and make sure that you have a very clear understanding of how you all are going to approach the partnership.
Interesting. That must have been a moment.
Yeah, because yes, you do have some coach integrity there where you're like, oh, what do I do with this? But
Right.
you know, we navigated it fine.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And so, and so here's the thing too. Like, I'm curious. I mean, obviously you have coaching experience, et cetera, and you've been certified for so long. Like, how did you originally get certified, and how did that process work for you?
Yeah, so I was working for Starwood Hotels and Resorts at the time, and they offered an opportunity for me to get certified as an executive coach. And I went through PCC certification, ICF certification. At the time, they kind of had a partnership with one another. PCC was kind of like the biggest or the best certification you could get globally. And so the company that I was with paid for it, and I had an opportunity to kind of go through all of it. And the learning was in person. So at that time, you would fly to the location and take it. Now, today, you can take it online, which is cool. I had to complete, I want to say, a total of 75 coaching hours as part of my like 2 certifications that I hold. And then from there, I've been certified ever since. And then, I refresh my own skills from time to time and go back and do some additional, like, kind of follow up courses and things just to keep myself fresh in the arena.
And from that first coaching certification, and I guess just with your like obviously extensive experience, what are some of what would you say are the 3 main foundational pillars of coaching that you've learned that have helped you maintain great relationships with your clients and also help them get to where they want to go?
That's a good one. 3 main things. Um, I was born like an intellectually curious person, so I can't speak enough to intellectual curiosity. There's a great book if you haven't read it yet. It's called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. It's probably the best book you could read
I'm gonna write that
in
down right now.
leadership and coaching. So Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. Definitely get a copy of that. I think the first fundamental skill as a good coach you need to have is the ability to ask questions. Um, and with that comes listening, together. But I think in asking questions, like you have a couple ways you can take your clients. Like if you don't know how to ask questions, I always describe it as an amusement park. You're kind of like a lazy river, meaning eventually you'll get there. But a coach who's really good at asking questions is kind of like that ride that goes like straight down. Like you can get people there a lot faster when you know how to ask the right questions to uncover stuff with them and get them to reflect on things. You get to the bottom of that slide way quicker with a questioning ability.
Love that.
Um, Secondly, I definitely think it's your integrity and how you care for your client. So never take on a client that you can't help. Like don't use a client as a testing ground for skills or for abilities. Um, get the education and knowledge that you need to actually help the people you're helping, and be cautious of, using your clients as a testing ground in any way. Like, make sure that you're really capable and you're ready to support them in what you're offering from a coaching perspective, and simultaneously, like, always keep their confidence and make sure that, from an integrity perspective, they're really, really well cared for. um, Sometimes, and I think earlier in my coaching, like, you try to put stuff on your clients because you're like testing it out or you're growing as a coach. And if I could go back, I would say, like, that wasn't the best experience for those clients. And I wish I handled some of those a little differently.
Can you elaborate on that just a hair?
Yeah, I think, for instance, like, just in a very simple way, like, if somebody's coming to you because they need to improve their executive presence and ability to communicate in front of a crowd, if you don't know how to coach to that, and that's something you have no clue how to do, like, help them find a different coach. And that's fine. Like, we all have our specialties and we're going to expand those over time. But think about what you're good at, and, like, make sure you're working with people that can benefit from you, and you're not, like, using that client as a testing ground for success. Um,
100%.
and I would say the third thing with coaching, just know that, I guess for me, third thing would be give, you know, be as honest with your clients as possible,
Mm-hmm.
which can be really tough sometimes. I think someone described me one time as, like, I have a velvet glove. Like, I throw punches, but with a velvet glove. And
That's crazy. I
I
can see you
think
that. I
that,
can't see you, so I'm visualizing you with this glove right now.
yeah, right. And I always took that as such a compliment. I guess somewhere along the way, I've navigated how to
Mm.
tell people the truth without making them feel really bad about themselves. So I think there is an art to coaching a little bit where, people are vulnerable and they're coming to you for help for a variety of reasons. And they know they have shortcomings. We all are our toughest critic at the end of the day, but find a way to be honest and caring at the same time and build people up, because at the end of the day, kindness and caring for people is going to go a lot further than any other criticism or opportunity we can shine a light
1,000%. I freaking love those points. They're so awesome, and so you spoke them very articulately. So thank you.
on.
And
Thank you.
here's the cool thing too, as I'm looking at these, because I wrote them down, they kind of build upon one another, right? The way you get to that honesty and that velvet glove is through the questions and listening, because it shows that you care, and through the integrity that you've cultivated with that client. They when you do deliver the honest truth, it is with a velvet glove, because you're coming from a place of like, hey, I'm here to serve you, I'm here to help you, and I have love for you and want to see you succeed. We're in this together. Like I always tell my clients, Kristin, like all of them occupy a chapter of the book of my life.
I love
Like
that.
like that's crazy. Like we're really out here like giving people chapters of our book. Like that's, to me, like my time is my most valuable thing. Like, wow. Like this is where I'm choosing to invest. I could do anything, as could you. So it's just, I love that. It makes life just so interesting when I think about it like that. That's like a little analogy that came to me probably like 2 months ago. And ever since then, I say to every person I meet, I'm like, listen, I'm with you. We're both on this voyage. We're both going to the new world. You know what I mean?
And that's why people are lucky to have you, because you really do care about them and you're always investing in your craft. And I think that's one of the things I love about you and you coaching others, is that you just care so much. And I think that goes further than any other skill set can go, is how much you care about people.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. And I see it in you as well. And for those of you who don't know, literally, I'll have to tell the story. I'm telling the story. So this is how
Okay.
I met Kristin. So I made a promise to myself, like, I don't know, when was it? Like last summer, that if there's this awesome smoothie bowl place that both Kristin and I frequent, and I didn't know her at the time, but I made this promise to myself that, hey, if I go to this place, I'm gonna bring my own bowl. I don't want to waste the bowls. Like it doesn't make sense to throw out plastic. Like la 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 la. So I'm walking down the stairs of my house at the shore, and I'm gonna go drive to this place, and I realized that I didn't bring my bowl, and I'm sitting in the car, and I have to walk all the way up 2 flights of stairs if I want to get it. And I'm like, do I really want to do this? And I got out of the car, I went up, got the bowl, and went to the place and got my smoothie bowl. And on the way out, I walked by and Kristin, you were in your car and you like were like, "Hey, I like your bowl." It was just like so random. But then we just got into this great conversation, ended up linking up and just having a great time and just getting to know each other on a much deeper level super, super quickly again, I think, because, when I think one of the caveats of coaching is that in the process of you asking questions and listening, you're also taking the time, if you're truly leading yourself, which I know you are and so many others are, you're also asking your questions to yourself and you're leading yourself in that way. And when two open, vulnerable, honest people get into a room together, conversation goes, it's like to your point, it's, instead of being a lazy river, it's just a like you're going right in, because there's no walls, there's no barrier to entry, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I always call those people the big marbles of life. Like when you're playing marbles, the big marbles like hit the little marbles like really
Yeah.
far. And I feel like coaches do that too. They kind of hit the little marbles really far. But when two big marbles get together, they kind of stop if you're playing the game, and they take the energy from each other. And I've always used that like kind of analogy since I wrote a paper about these marbles in college. And I
That's
one
amazing, I
day will
love
like
that.
one day I'm going to do something with this marble theory. But ultimately, I think that when you find another big marble in the world, it's so awesome because you just kind of feed off each other's energies and you have a lot to give to one another and learn from each other. And that was kind of how I viewed our meeting. And I now bring my own bowl because Graham made me feel like a loser that I was using
Oh,
the bowl of the
well, there's a
restaurant.
there's a secret to the bowl, right? Not only are we saving some plastic, but they also give you more. So
Yes.
you big of don't bring too big of a bowl. A bowl wasn't that. It was like a salad bowl, but a little bit bigger of a bowl. But I love that analogy. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of analogies, Kristin. I think I don't even know at this point how much of my language when I'm coaching is actually in analogies, but as much of it as I possibly can to try and get the point across um, in a way that's understandable, right? Because I think, and you're obviously super aware of this, is in coaching and just in life, so much of what happens is just, that's good and bad, is either a lack or the right amount of communication. You know what I mean? Like humans can't read each other's minds, right? So being able
Yeah.
to really command language and use your words in a way that makes sense and have other people understand you better. And for you, which now let's bring that conversation to that because it's super cool. You have clients all over the world. How do you navigate foreign languages, foreign cultures, right? Because you've got a lot going on there. How does that all work?
Yeah, I'm so blessed in that regard. I started traveling really young for work and have continued that till today. I've always had a global or multi national career. And how does it work? I mean, you're always awake. That's how it works. You're always available for phone calls. There is no time zone, like
Right.
even if I'm working with clients from Seattle, like the big companies out west, there's no like East Coast time zone for me, even though I live here. And navigating cultures, I was fortunate to learn at one of the companies I started traveling with, they would do culture briefings for us, which would give us kind of an insight of what to anticipate, like rules not to break in the culture. And that was a great like learning lesson for me in my early 20s so that then I could continue to learn about cultures, even with companies who didn't provide me that prep. Um, I've had some crazy experiences, but I have to tell you, working with people around the world makes me a better human being by far. Um, I love every experience. The way that people work in other places is so different than the way we work in the United States. And I just am constantly grateful for these wonderful people that I know around the globe and the amazing and hilarious adventures I've had navigating to these places. But at the end of the day, America is so fast paced and we're so sometimes ahead of the curve in some aspects of business and life and all the stuff we have access to that I love talking to people from Greece who are just kind of, taking a 1 o'clock break to drink some wine and have a long lunch. Like I love working in South America where my clients end the day a lot earlier because they get naps in the afternoon so they could do some dancing during the weeknights. Like I'm so grateful for the people who teach me how to like experience the world better. And definitely my clients globally really do that for me.
That's so cool. And I love the little depictions of Greece. Like I had a real visual going there, and of South America.
Yeah.
What are, can you give us some other examples similar to that from the other countries or parts of the world? Because I think that's super cool. And I know a lot of people they don't think like that or don't understand that culture. If they've never been out of the country, you wouldn't know, right?
Well, a couple funny things that have happened to me. One, in Italy, I decided after work one day I was going to go from Venice to explore a beach town called Jesolo, and I didn't speak Italian, so I had to take all I really took away from this guy who's giving me directions was I had to take two boats and a bus, so I was able to navigate that. I do speak a few languages, by the way, but I don't speak Italian. So I navigated over to Italy to this little town called Jesolo, and the whole time I was there, I was having a great time. And then all of a sudden, somebody told me that the town was shut down for 2 days starting at 6 p.m. due to a festival. Well, it was 7 p.m. And I said, well, how do I get back to Venice? And they said, oh, you don't. There's no transportation. So I think that's a great example of like a part of a country just completely shutting down
Wow.
to honor the Virgin Mary for 2 straight days and like drink, grappa and all these different things and eat Italian food. And meanwhile, like I have to get back to Venice and have zero way to get there. And so that was entertaining.
How did you get
And
back?
I ended up convincing like this guy who invited me to dinner at his family's house because I was like kind of roaming the streets alone at this festival. So he asked if I wanted to come eat with them. And then I asked him if there was any possible way he could drive me to Venice, which was now 2 boats and a bus to drive as the equivalent was like 2.5 hours. And
Wow.
yeah, so his cousin actually ended up driving. Long story short, at like 6 a.m., I rolled back into my hotel in Venice, and then at 7:45, I was dressed and ready for my work day.
No
But I
way.
think that yes, that definitely, I've been in Singapore eating at these beautiful food markets and just experiencing the food of the cultures. And one thing about some of the Asian countries is food is such a big way that they get to know people. Well, many countries, but one of the cool like Asian experiences was people would take me to a lot of the markets and introduce me to their culture that way. And we'd always like kind of eat first and have some great conversation before we did any work. Um, so yeah, every place is a little bit different, and I've had a lot of things I think I did okay in these countries to represent myself, and other times where I really was like the shining star American trying to
Right,
figure
right, right. Always Americans, you know what I mean? I love it.
it. Mhm.
That's so cool. And I think, especially with like the Asian countries, it's so interesting that they don't do any chatting about stuff till after you like get to know one another and connect, if you will, to a little bit. I think that's just so interesting. In America, it's the complete opposite. It's I'm only gonna eat lunch with you if we have something to talk about.
Yeah, and I think it depends like which country you're in. Like in Japan, it was such a beautiful, like I spent like 2 days just getting to know the culture, it felt like.
Mm,
And before we did some of the work. And then there were a lot of lessons for me to learn about, you know, how do women show up in these cultures as a female and what rules do I need to follow as a woman if I'm in Dubai or if I'm in other places. So like lots of lessons to learn and um, just really, really fascinating. It really
uh,
opens your eyes to how big the world is. And for me, it's made me live a lot bigger to the fact of like, gosh, we have such a short time here on this earth. I want to do everything I possibly can.
right. I love that. I mean, what a unique experience. I feel like I'm like following you around right now in your mind, just kind of revisiting these cool places that you've been. And I know recently that you said that you were like doing some client work with people from Sweden, et cetera, and you got like your like interior design work. Did you say that was from Sweden or like from like Sweden style?
Oh no. So yes, I'm doing work with folks in Sweden. It's actually a nonprofit
Okay.
that the Hilton hotels introduced me to during the pandemic. And I volunteered alongside with a team of fabulous leaders at the Hilton to do a full like build out of some work for this nonprofit called the Bring Hope Foundation. Everybody check them out. They support refugees globally. They're doing amazing work. And we build out some people processes for their organization. And I've continued to stay on and help the leader of the organization with their mission and their strategy and some of their planning for the future, which has been wonderful. And I was talking about design because I read a book on the 52 Books Challenge about Swedish design.
Interesting. Okay, got you. All right, cool.
Yes.
What were some of the interesting things that you learned about this design book? Like, and have you implemented them in your own home?
There's a book called Pants Drunk. Yes, and I recommend. So there's Hygie, which I still don't pronounce correctly. So for those listening, I still don't know how to pronounce it. There's
Hygge?
yes,
Okay, I think it's Hugga. I think it's Hugga.
Hoga, yeah, something
Hugga.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I still don't pronounce it correctly. So I think there were like three of them. It was like Hoga, Pants Drunk, and Lagome, and they're all like Norway, Sweden, Denmark. They're all the way that they live their life.
Hmm.
So definitely check out Pants Drunk because there is one of those three cultures who goes home every day and takes off their pants and sits around in their underwear. I'm not implementing that around my house, but
things we learn, right?
I'm all for the people who are getting pants drunk every day.
Interesting. Again, I think that, one of the things I've been fortunate enough to do, and I'm 27 now, in my last few years, is like get to at least a taste of some of that stuff, right? I know you've had you've had a full course meal at this point.
Yeah.
I've had quite a taste, definitely an appetizer and like, the beginnings of an entree. So I just think that it's so cool that you have that experience and that it's what broadened your perspective on the way you live life. And so that's kind of my question. I mean, coming from a corporate environment and like, working with all these companies and then getting this in America at least, and then getting a chance to work with all these foreign companies and experience their cultures. What have you kind of like, what would you call yourself, or how would you say, like, if each country is its own dish, like what would you say you've done to create your soup, Kristin soup, that is like your best takeaways from everything, including you being an American, to create a life where you have this, it seems like a nice balance of like, I'm going to work and get my stuff done, and like we need to get this stuff handled, but like I need to enjoy myself, and I'm taking a break, and I'm like not doing anything. I'm going to hang out with my dog, etc. Like, what would you call your in between there, and how would you describe it?
That's a good question. How would I describe like myself as a result of all that?
Sure,
Is that
like changes that it made you. Yeah, I guess that's better. Yeah.
yeah, I think that um so it's interesting. Like I've been super fortunate to, and I hope anyone listening isn't offended if I say blessings or God or those words on the podcast, but for my own life, I feel very fortunate. Like my work life has really fallen into place in a lot of ways, right? My personal life, like I'm still not married yet. I'm still searching for my amazing husband. I hope he's out there somewhere. My personal life still has like some dreams and wishes that haven't come to fruition, I'll call it. But what I've learned the most is just kind of the middle of all of these experiences is that the people are the journey. And when I'm out in this world, I've learned from these countries. Like I used to be kind of like I'm very introverted, but I'm very extroverted at work. But in my personal life, I can be quite shy and quite introverted. But what these experiences have taught me is like when you get an opportunity to come across people or experience something with other people, whether you go to it by yourself, like whether you're bungee jumping by yourself, but you're with 5 other people bungee jumping at the same time, like take the time to strike up the conversation because we have these opportunities for moments of magic that just happen, whether it's individual experiences, but they also are so much more full when you can celebrate them through conversation or through a drink with someone else, or you never know who you're going to meet every day. And I always say, like, yes, I might not have this husband yet, but I've had some amazing global romances and I'm not going to trade those in for anything, right? Like those have been magical. And I think if you just view your life I think the global world has taught me not to work as hard to achieve everything. If you do your best work and always put good quality and care about the work you're doing, and you give stuff away and it comes back to you, like you just do things with a good heart and you're willing to kind of show up, then I feel like the world's going to reward you for that, but never take for granted. My soup is like never taking for granted the people and the journey because they are what has made my life so special.
I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna make this a thing. What's your soup? What's your soup? What's your soup? I'm about to ask everybody. Okay, so tell
That
me.
was a tough question. So I had to
That was a
dig
great answer. That was a great answer, right? The people are the journey, and really getting to, and I'm so in alignment with that. I love that about traveling and making every little thing I do in its own little adventure. And that's where the magic, like you said, happens, is in that 2 seconds of conversation, or that dude's you both two people who don't know each other both see the same dog do this really weird thing, glance at each other, and then they're gone. And it's like, that was amazing. I'll never see that person again. And like, that was, I don't know what that dog was doing, but it was kind of weird. And we both laughed, even though we don't know each other and we speak different languages and we have different ideas and all that stuff, like the commonality, right? Of just embracing life and joy in the moment. Um, and I really love that. And I think there's so much there. And obviously you as the chief people officer, like that's it. And so with that said, as far as being the chief people officer, I've never even heard that term until I just heard it with you. As far as like your technical role, how did that get developed? And is that something that other companies use? Is that something that's common now in corporate America, or is that something that you developed yourself?
No, that's been around for a while. I'm always trying to figure out what to call myself. I guess you could call me the CEO of my company, the chief
Okay.
people officer. I use that term sometimes because I work in people strategy.
Right.
So it's a little more definitive about the work I do. Um, People strategist. There's so many. There's chief talent officers, chief people officers, chief culture officers. There's a lot of those terms out there. And sometimes it's funny because, like, if you don't work in the big corporations, I feel like a lot of what I speak about is like Mandarin Chinese, and the terms don't translate all the time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when I'm talking to people who don't work for those companies, I'm always trying to figure out how to tell people what I do, right? Because it can be a little confusing.
Right. 100%. I feel you on that. And I think that, as simple as it can be, right? You're the founder of your company. So
Yeah. And we're all doing the same stuff on a different scale. So my thing is, like, it doesn't matter if you have a coaching practice and you coach 10 people a year, or you work in, a big company and you coach 300 people a year. We're all using the same skills, the same energy, the same, mindset to make it happen. It's just how big or small we're scaling it up or down.
right, 1,000%. And yeah, I think that's super interesting because I want to revisit this portion of the conversation from earlier. I mean, you obviously worked in corporate for 8 years, and I know that from our previous conversation, you grew really fast within the company. Like, you really excelled in that structure and helped you get to a whole new position. But when you started your new company, you were like, oh my gosh, like, who's going to hire me? Is it going to be like am I going to be a barista down the street, or am I going to have like a different, you know what I mean? So can you revisit that with us and just share some of your insight? Because I know there's definitely people listening that are like, oh my gosh, should I quit my job? I really want to pursue this. Like, it's something my heart really feels called to do. Or like, they've already been doing coaching for a while, but they're maybe afraid to leave their job. Can you elaborate a little bit on some of the things and some of the struggles and adversity you went through and how you got through it?
Yeah, and for anyone listening, there's nothing scarier than leaving your job. So I can relate to you. My heart goes out to you. If you want to call me up and talk about it, call me anytime. I'll talk to you about it. Um, but I will say this, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And the one thing I think I did really well in preparation is that I did a lot of preparation. So I wrote my business plan. I interviewed 30 other consultants who do the work I do to figure out how they were pricing, what they were doing, what did their products look like. And for 2 years, I just spent time learning and figuring out what was I going to do. What was interesting was I kind of did the opposite of what the 30 people were doing, because they all said I had to have one product, and I don't do that at all. I have like a ton of things I do. Um,
I love how you asked 30 people and then you're like, yeah, I don't, that's
yeah,
great.
I
Keep
don't
going.
do what they do, and I also don't price the way they price either. Everyone had advice for that, and I do the exact opposite there too. But those what I learned from all of that is you have to do what's authentic to you if you're going to be successful. You can't replicate somebody else's business. You have to like come up with your plan and your business that will work for you, and that will create success on its own. From a struggle perspective, the other thing I knew about myself is I'm not a salesperson, and I didn't have any interest in doing that. So what I knew was I had to cultivate relationships when I left to figure out how I was going to go to market. So I'm a big fan for like a four-pronged business strategy, and I'm happy to share more about that if anybody's interested in the future. But ultimately, when you're doing something like that, you have to figure out like where are your revenue streams coming from. So for me, I knew that a revenue stream was going to be looking for open contracting roles for the work I do that are available on the internet. So I would dedicate X number of hours per week applying to consulting roles that were open. So short-term contract jobs or short-term contract coaching jobs. Simultaneously, I had people who were referring me into work because they knew I went private. So people who said, hey, I know someone who might need you. So I was like cultivating my network. And then in addition to that, I had started to build some relationships with the 30 people I interviewed. And I reached out to them, and some of them actually helped introduce me to folks. And then the last area was I reached out to people who place contractors and consultants. So knowing I wasn't a good salesperson, four of my ways I was going to market, in addition to my product line, four ways or service line and products, was how was I going to get in front of people? So having four different ways of getting in front of people has allowed me to today, like 2020, so 8 years later, I've never actually sold anything. So I've never done any marketing. I've never sold anything on my website. I don't do any social media. 100% of my business comes in through these other streams, and I've never actually had to like try and get a sale anywhere. And so you have to work to your strengths to make it work for you.
Kristin, that's amazing.
I feel so fortunate. I also say it's a little bit of that and a whole lot of God. Those two together has got me 8 years.
So and it's interesting too. So when you went to, because I know this is something really big for a lot of people watching are probably in their 20s, mostly in their 20s, early 30s, and reaching out to people sometimes that are above them, right? Sometimes can be like a little bit scary if they haven't done it before. Like you just reached out to them and asked them if you could interview a little bit about, what they do and get some insight, basically.
For the most part, yeah. So ultimately, like a lot of these folks that I interviewed were people that I used as vendors when I was working in my job in corporate America. So these were people I already had like some relationship with, but then I asked them if they knew other people. And then I just kind of Googled some places too that I thought were doing well in comparable work. And I did pick up the phone and see if a CEO would talk to me and have a conversation with me. It's hit or miss sometimes, but I think that if you have, again, it's all about the preparation, the planning, and how you organize yourself. If you don't have any structure around that, then there's a good chance like it'll take you longer or you'll get more frustrated. But if you have a plan that you're working, it's much easier to flex and adjust that plan than it is to have no plan.
Well, folks, if you don't have a plan, that's your signal to do so. Because Kristin, you are living, breathing proof that you don't need to pick up the phone and do any sales or marketing. So there goes tons of people's jobs that's all they do. It's all they do is spending their time doing. And there's like, for me, one thing I've noticed, especially with social media, is that there's just a ton of coaches out there and this is something that I'm like really interested in just keeping an eye on, but there's nothing I can do about it necessarily except continue to do what I do. But there's tons of marketers out there right now. I guess you could say they're marketing coaches, but they're calling themselves like coaches in general. And I don't necessarily think that's the same thing. Because one thing that I learned through a program that I did was that a lot of the people that are in it, especially coming up, in these through the social media realm, a lot of them don't necessarily need a lot more professional stuff right now. They need more personal stuff, similarly to how you said earlier that if you don't help your clients with what's right in front of them and holding them back, they're not gonna be able to do the bigger thing, right? And I know that's like huge right now. So I think that it's really cool that that's the way that you built it and that's the way that you are doing it. And literally just now, after years and years and years of doing this, like you're like, yeah, I'll hire a sales team to like handle this stuff because now it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the new products I created needed a sales team because I don't have time to actually take them to market. So when I started to get a lot of phone calls on them, I realized, wow, I don't have time to answer the phone for these folks. So that is 8 years in, like putting in sellers around my wellness and inclusion work has been exciting. And they're also the first products I've ever created that are off the shelf, meaning someone can purchase it. It's turnkey and I don't have to do a lot of work within the product. So it's only 10% customizable. So that's really exciting too,
Cool.
is the business can expand in that direction without me touching a lot of stuff, which is awesome as well. Because I think for myself, like if you think about your own goals when you're in work, it's really about what are your life goals that your work can support. And I know for me, like, my life goals are continue to take more time off and also create generational wealth that, can support me in the future. So I don't have to work so hard. So when I think about things like a product line that I don't have to do a lot of consulting on, or I don't have to spend a lot of my time in, that's a great next step 8 years in to allow me to grow income that, is kind of coming into the company in a different way.
Love that.
But real quick, I love the people who are on social media doing their thing. They can make $1 million doing it that way. That is, I thought about it. I really did. I love you do it, Graham. You're so good at it. I'm not someone you'll ever see doing that. I don't think. Maybe I will. You never know where business can take you. But I feel like there's a lot of talented people out there today offering products through social media. And I think that that is positive. I don't know how well it's working for everyone, but I am definitely someone who says a good plan, a good strategy, if social media doesn't have to be a part of it to go make that $1 million either.
Well, yeah, I think based off of the work that your company's been doing, I think you're living proof of that. I think there are, I think that there's, I think since you're not on social media, like, I'd say like as much maybe as myself and other people that we're talking about right now, I think it's people don't know that it's possible, right? Especially because like for me, one thing that I've noticed, Kristin, is that like a lot of the people that I've gotten to know in like the coaching space are all in like these similar networks of people that have been, come down through these different marketing vectors at social media. Like there's like certain social media people that have been like super consistent since day one, and they've kind of like slowly the thought has trickled down all the way to everybody else. And so I think that a lot of people think that's the only way they can do it.
Yeah, I'm like a huge fan of influencers and people mastering social media. And there's been a lot of times I've questioned my own marketing strategies around what do I need to do differently. Um, and there might be pieces of that I have to explore in the future, but there is like a great business arena today for people going to market from a social media perspective. And I think for anybody approaching it that way, kind of like I always think about things, you just want to be the best at what you do, like keep learning, keep trying it out. And the one piece of advice I would give anybody who wants to have a company or has a company is don't get discouraged when one idea doesn't work. If that's okay, just keep going, try the next idea. Like not every idea is going to land and be your $1 million idea, right? Like it might not be a $2 idea, and that's fine. You tried it, you gave it your best shot. And if it doesn't work, just move on to the next thing, because there's plenty of people that need help. And if you're bringing your authentic skills to the table, people are going to be attracted to that.
And I love that point. I think I think that's, it's foundational, right? For an entrepreneur is to be like, okay, cool. Like this didn't work. You're an inventor, right? If you're trying to build something, it's not always going to work the first time. And for me, my question for you, Kristin, is like, I know you as a super creative person. How do you harness your creativity to create these different products or programs or packages or opportunities that people can come and learn and grow through creations of your own?
Gosh, I don't even know. So I've always been really interested in innovation, and I think by my nature I'm creative. And if I was going to do life again, I'd probably do like a different creative career. For me, I do a lot of ideation sessions in my house. Like I will 100% like my office. I just redid my office again during the pandemic, but it's covered in whiteboards, blank pages. Like I always say, like I'm a creator, I'm a builder. I am my best with a blank piece of paper. I think it's really important to take the time to just take out the blank piece of paper and put your favorite music on and, dance around a bit and then sit down and think about whatever's on your mind and put it down, and always take your ideas and throw them up somewhere where you can see them. Eventually, they're going to tell a story and they're going to connect to each other. And that's where some of my best work comes from, is just that time. And I do that for my clients too. Like my clients who hire me to create stuff, I literally sit there and have to ideate on a daily basis for them. And for me, like I need to have a little bit of music and then a whole lot of quiet and some good snack food. And then I let the ideas flow, and then you kind of see where they go. And I've had to tell clients, like the other day, I had to tell a client who needed something on a Tuesday that I couldn't get it to them till Wednesday because I was still evolving the idea. And I don't like to be late, but sometimes like creativity can't be forced either. You have to give it a minute. So I think, get out there and ideate as much as you can, because that's where I think the best ideas come from.
Interesting. So what's the snack food? What's the secret snack?
Oh gosh, I try not to eat like crazy bad food, but my office has these really pretty jars I put in it, like glass jars with these little wooden tops. So I've got some pretzels in there right now. I have some holiday gummy bears, and I have some peanut M&Ms.
There we go. Okay, cool. Is I don't I think that's hugger, right? Isn't it just like chill basically?
Yeah, just relax and
So
snack.
that's how you ideate. You hugger. I think that's
Yeah.
right.
Or
Okay, cool.
I should be saying with grandma on the phone, I go and get all my green juices and my vegan desserts. And
Oh, come
I
on.
do that
I'm
as
not.
well, actually. But
I'm not. That's not me. I snack quite a bit actually, because one thing that for me, Kristen, is that this year with the pandemic and me moving to California and not knowing tons of people, and also working from home, it's been the first time in my career that I've had like my own space to work in. That's also my home. So, like learning how to get out and go do stuff and take lots of breaks that involve me leaving my apartment has been just
mhm.
critical. Otherwise, I think you really hit the nail on the head with the creativity, like having your own space, right? I always say this little mantra: space creates. You can't really create without space. You need space to do it. So for you, that
Yeah.
space is like my office and whiteboards and blank paper and a little bit of music and some good snacks. And like for me, what I found is that if I do too much production or too many productive things in my space, it turns into me just feeling like I need to be productive and less about me being able to like really sit there and let that stuff savor and then let that stuff kind of bubble and then me take those ideas and just throw them out there. So for me this year, it's been a lot about learning like, okay, cool. Like I need to take multiple breaks a day. I need to go out. And so snacks have become something that I've enjoyed a little bit as well. It's sort of like a little thing Autumn and I do. We'll literally just go to the grocery store. It's like 0.7 miles away. Jimbo's, you know Jimbo's? You probably know Jimbo's.
No.
Okay. Jimbo's is like, they only have organic stuff. So it's definitely my
Oh,
kind
that
of
sounds
spot,
good.
but they got like the healthy organic snacks. So,
Yeah.
we're chowing down on all kinds of things. And obviously I just found these mere energy things, which I'm a big fan of,
You definitely hit on a good point there, though. Get outside, get outdoors, like switch up your routine. Like, I am privileged in owning my company. I can set my boundaries when I schedule calls. So I always leave. If I'm scheduling the meeting, a 45-minute call, I get outside for 15 minutes. I come back to the next one. If a client schedules it, I don't always have that freedom. But get outside, like switch it up, because most of the times my ideas come in the shower, or like when I'm sleeping, when I wake up. Like a lot of my ideas don't even come during the workday at all. They come when I'm
interesting.
not thinking about anything. But I'm always saying like the idea is always like kind of churning around in my head somewhere.
It's so interesting hearing you like talk about creativity because now I'm just like fascinated. You've worked with a lot of different people and you've seen how they operate. And I know for me, like I always kind of like joke with myself that like I don't know if you've ever seen this, but have you ever seen that HBO documentary on Steven Spielberg?
No.
There's this amazing scene where he like kind of like jokes about the fact that when he gets on set, he has no idea how he's going to shoot anything. He says, all my best ideas come at the last minute. So he literally goes into this thing without any idea of what he's doing. And then it comes. And for me, what I found is that most of my ideas, to your point about like churning and letting them just kind of like process, it's already happening. It just hasn't come to you yet. And so much of that is the case with me as well with creativity. And, obviously, for you and your company, for me and my company, like these were mental creations that we've had that are now manifested in the physical reality, but they were all here. Like these were just things we were thinking about that we turned into something. For you, based on your experience and what you've seen, like, do you think that there's like innate creativity in each person, or do you feel like some people just have it just clicks so much easier than others? Because you've worked with a lot of different people and in a lot of different departments and lots of kinds of people, right? I work with mostly just coaches, so I really only see that kind of person. But I'm curious as to your thoughts on that because you have a really cool perspective on it.
I don't think everyone's born with creativity and like that need to create or that need to innovate. Being someone who helps people with new skill development, I think that you can learn skills to be creative, and one thing I always tell people, this is a secret. I've never told anyone in a group this. I tell individuals this, but I'll give the secret out today.
Oh,
Um, One of my best strategies for creating is I'm a collector of information. So every day, if I'm reading a magazine or I'm watching a TV show or I'm triangulating news in the morning to come to my phone, or I'm out and I see like a product at Target, I keep a folder and I capture all the information in this folder. So if it's like an article, like I rip it out and I stick it in the folder. If it's a something at Target, I take a picture and I stick it in the folder. Maybe I like the way it was marketed or the language used with it. If I see something on TV, I'll either take a picture or I'll write down what I read and I print it out and stick it in the folder. So I'm like a collector of information. And then I think all of that information, those stories, those things that like pique my interest, like they inspire me. So I always encourage everyone, like if you want to be more creative, find a way to be inspired, and that inspiration will help you step into your creativity even more. For me, I've always been a collector of inspiration, and I think that is because I'm naturally like interested in creativity or naturally born a little bit as that creative person. But collecting inspiration is a great way to bring more innovation to your work and bring more creativity to what you're doing with your clients.
I freaking love that so much. And uh, I wanted to add a little bit to it too, because I think there's so much relatability in that. And for me, what I found, and I know you read 52 books. Of those 52 books you read, what percentage of those were like fantasy or some type of fiction? Do you read a lot of fiction?
Probably like 20%, 15.
Okay. So
Yeah, like,
you definitely embedded in there.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I found for me that I've drawn a lot of my creativity from just like different video games I've played
Yeah.
and like different like types of movies and shows that I've seen that are like maybe a little further out for some people, and then lots of books I've read. I mean, I'm finishing up Lord of the Rings: Return of the King right now. I have it right here. Got this
Oh,
really cool
nice.
one. Yeah, it's so cool. It's my first time reading Tolkien, so like I've really enjoyed it. But I found that for me, like having that stuff around, and then you know what, Kristin, the other thing too that I found is that I'm pretty big on minimalism. Like we don't have any furniture and we don't have a TV. So I like have these yoga poofs that I like sit on the floor, and I feel like I'm in such when there's like I said more space. Naturally, things just start to sort like they just show up. You know what I mean? And it's easier.
Yeah.
There's less distractions, right? So I think there's like such an element of that as well. And I feel like for whatever reason, lots of creative types are like less about distractions and more about space to just like kind of do their thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I couldn't agree. And it's funny because I think about the book that you're reading and my visit to New Zealand, like
Oh, you've been there. Oh my
going
God.
there and like to the Hobbit land. And gosh, what a like an imagination put into play. Like I'll send you my 275 pictures if you want to look at them. But
I do.
I look at those sometimes, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this was just someone's imagination, and now it is this place that is just spectacularly magical. And you can go in a hobbit house and you can drink the beer and the drinks and you can like it's just fascinating. And I think about that sometimes. I'm like, gosh, this was just someone's like idea that they wrote on paper. And we all have those ideas within us. We all have the power to make things that could one day be globally magical too, right? So I think to your point, like creating space to think and to dream and to create is a huge part of what I wish everybody did. But I know for me, it's a huge part of who I am.
Right. What are some like I know you know you probably can't like share all the different things, but what are some of like your coolest or favorite like workshops or like creative products or projects that you've worked on that you were like this was like super cool and it really changed the game for XYZ, changed how I thought about how I was coaching this thing or how this thing was done in this company, etc.
Yeah, so I've got so many great client projects that I just am so proud to be a part of. I think one of my favorites, I tend to always love the projects that are culture related. So like
Hmm.
my like life gravitates to the culture design work, even though I don't get to do a ton of it because there's not always a lot of people who need their culture redesigned, but or any designed. But I love those projects. So there was a project a few years ago with T-Mobile that I did, and we had a fabulous leader leading the work, and I kind of had this idea to bring in a hip hop dance instructor from Las Vegas to help with part of the culture kickoff. And if you can imagine like 200 people coming in for a conference, and I we brought this hip hop dance instructor in, and she did like an afternoon of hip hop dances, and then we broke people out and they had to come up with their own kind of breakout dances like based on themes. And we had one group who did this like beautiful like Indian dancing. Like it was just such a fun day, and I love the way culture can just permeate everything. And when you have a strong culture, it really can just create such amazing experiences for people. So I think that's an example of a project where, like, fast forward out a year later, we had created a Facebook community at that kickoff event. And a year later, we've got people talking to each other all over the world, associates of this culture project, where we're like actually associates, not even the culture team, but the actual associates on the phone selling you your T-Mobile phones, challenging each other all the way all around the world to like dance offs and what are they doing from a leadership perspective at their site, and giving advice and teaching each other. And so I don't know, there's something really cool about the culture projects because they grab you at the heart. And probably my most proud work are the ones that I get to do that with.
That's super neat. So you had this idea to bring in a hip hop dance
Yeah.
instructor, and then everyone kind of broke out and did their own dances, and so everyone went from being adults to kids really quickly, basically.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Like, she was this top like hip hop instructor in Vegas. She like trains people in music videos, and she comes flying into the room and music is blasting and she gets everybody up to do a hip hop dance. And it was just, I mean, we've got people of all generations in the room. And so every once in
Wow.
a while, but again, like the whole project had to be created around a theme that was engaging and fun, and kind of this cultural experience we were creating. But I really learned a lot of that when I was working in hospitality and helping to create hotel brands and the
Mm.
culture at the hotels, because they have a unique experience for the guest every time. And so I've just been really infected by the culture bug, and I really think it's so powerful. So whenever I get a project like that, that's a proud moment.
Interesting. So for you, and I know this is something that I'm super big on too. Like I'm pretty obsessed with it because I think it's just so fascinating. Even last night, I like screenshotted this little restaurant we went to. I screenshotted their story because I just wanted to like kind of share with my clients and just people in general, like what happens when you really know your company's vision, your mission, and the values, and all the things that make it up. What happens to the experience that I get as a customer? Like I get to come into a place I trust immediately, like that is what it says it is. It's all in alignment. So for you, you're pretty big on culture as well. What are some of the things that you've noticed working with some of these larger companies where in some situations you've seen like, okay, I should say this, like, what are the things you've seen um, working with these companies where people that have good culture versus not so good culture in the company, how does that impact the experience of you working with them and coaching them and the employees? Like what's their perspective on it? I'm curious.
So culture wins every day. Like, there's a saying in corporate America, culture eats that strategy for breakfast, I think is the saying. So culture trumps everything. If you can create a good culture, a strong culture set on really good values, and you actually live it, and the people of your company are living it, there's nothing that beats that experience. And a lot of times when you talk about culture, a really common example is like Harley Davidson and the culture that they've created through the biking community. And there's very few, I wouldn't say very few. I think companies have gotten better with culture over time, but companies are still figuring it out. Large organizations are so big, you might have 450,000 people globally trying to figure out how to have a cohesive culture is kind of tough. And now with people working remote, the question of culture has been so on everyone's mind. How do we keep a culture going when we're remote? I was talking to some folks at Facebook recently, and they're hiring in like a head of remote working, because now we have to kind of figure out in companies, how are we going to keep people connected, right? It's going to be a really interesting journey to see how this kind of evolves and happens. But definitely there's a massive difference between people who have a good culture and people who aren't following their values to the T. And the difference is like us, engaged associates versus not engaged associates, or people feeling that things aren't as organized or cohesive, or they don't know how everything that they're doing connects stuff. But at the end of the day, I always say to anybody, find the company culture that speaks to you, because what speaks to you is going to be very different than what maybe speaks to me. And you could be the best culture out there, but not everyone's going to want to work for the values that you're standing for, because that might not be core to them.
Right. Love that. And I'm curious, obviously you being in this field and having so much knowledge and experience, how do you feel like companies and how do you feel like we can adapt to this whole like working from home thing? Because that was my first thought. For me, like whatever, I've been doing it. People that I work with, it's been a thing. We try and get together as much as possible, but we manage. But for these other companies where, now like it's sort of like open season, you don't have to be in, you don't have to be out. Like, how did they stick together through this? Like, what are your thoughts on that, or what strategies are you thinking about, or where has your mind taken you? Because I know it's something you've for sure pondered.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a lot of different thoughts on it. I think the people that I feel worse for, or like kind of badly for right now about work from home, are new college graduates, or people kind of in the first 5, 6 years of their career. Because there is like a real benefit for somebody merging into a company and getting that experience and learning from the people that they meet in the cafeteria as much as they're learning from the people in their team. So I do feel a little bit for the younger generations coming into the workplace, more than I feel for the folks who've been adapting to technology already. And we've been working, I've been working virtual most of my career in a lot of ways. But I do think there's a whole other level of connection that's going to be needed: team dynamics, team building, inclusion. I mean, inclusion is already a topic that's so important to companies, and they're really trying to figure out inclusion. So now there's a whole other layer of how do we include people
Can you
when
can you
folks.
can you go a little bit deeper with that? Because I think that's something that I don't think for me, for one, I don't even necessarily fully understand the grasp of that. Could you go a little bit deeper with that?
Sure. So inclusion is really about, you might hear it in a couple of ways, like diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, the way that we embrace all identity groups in the workplace. And inclusion as a topic and belonging is so important for folks. It has been for quite some time, but I'm not sure folks have really been figuring it out. And this year, I think we got a lot more spotlight on inclusion and how do we care about people of different identity groups in the best way possible. So now, if you imagine people working from home, you already had some challenges of being inclusive of everyone. And how do we really care for folks in this new world? And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of planning, a lot of effort and thinking. For me personally, if you just think about video, for instance, like there's people who don't want to be on video for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're not comfortable with how they look. Maybe they just don't like it. Maybe it intimidates them. And now companies are kind of laying that as an expectation. It's demanding to do that all day. Like, is that inclusive of everyone's needs? Like, there's a lot of things to think about, I think, as this world is changing, but I'm excited to, I know, partner with some of my clients on this topic and kind of see where it's going to go. I think the next couple of years is going to be really telling.
Right, because obviously with this whole like second wave that's happening right now, I know that like tons of things are closing, and I know that some of my friends who are in their mid to late 20s are like, yeah, they're not, we're not going back to the office till at least like middle of next year. Like all this, like it's just crazy, like what's happening on that level and how that's impacting people, and already we were, the human race, and especially in America, with everyone being so digital, is already, like, I feel like truly lacking that like true deeper connection that we were so blessed to create so quickly. And now with like everything being remote, it's even like, things are closed, it's harder now. Like, what are we gonna, like, you don't get that, it's grand, you can do things virtually, but being in person with somebody, feeling the energy in that way is so powerful. So I'm super curious to see how that all plays out, because it's obviously, it's crazy. I mean, at this point we kind of got used to it, but like at the beginning of this year, this is not how we thought this is going to go. You know what I
No.
mean?
And my biggest prediction has been, I think, the performance. So, like, when you think about people's performance at work and how they get bonused or how they get rewarded or how they're rated, for lack of a better term, I don't love that term, but um, I think we're going to see performance change. I think we're going to see high potentials and high performers struggle. And I think we're going to see a shift in who's doing well versus who used to be doing well,
Wow.
because there's been a set of like rules of how you are successful when you're in a building. And I'm very curious to see like what skill sets are going to kind of rise up now, and will the rules change, and are we going to see the same people be successful? Like, I'm not really sure if we are.
What an interesting insight. Wow. I can totally see what you're saying. 100%. Right?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's going to be
Fascinating.
fascinating. And plus, jobs are also changing too, like with the demands of technology. So this, what are the skills of the future is something I'm always helping my clients think about, especially on the leadership side. And it's a really good question. Like, what are the skills of the future going to be, and what are the skills we need to be preparing people for or thinking about for ourselves?
What skills do you feel like the skills have changed that are necessary to be successful as a leader since you started
Oh,
16 years ago?
absolutely. Yes, 1000%. I just did for all my clients the last 6, 7 months, I've been doing um, like a free lunch and learn presentation on change leadership and the importance of being a leader of change and the demand of that skill. In the future, it used to be that companies went through changes like once every couple years. Now companies go through changes like once every 16 weeks sometimes. So if you're a leader, knowing how to navigate change, knowing how people go through a change curve, how to care about people, knowing how to create your strategy to be flexible and adapting, like it's super hard. And I think there's a lot of skills rising to the top, like warmth has always been the number one respected skill of leadership according to the Gallup survey. for
Warmth.
30,
What do you mean by that?
for 30 years now, warmth, like genuine caring and warmth, has always been the top skill in that global survey. And I think that's going to continue to sit at the top because I think we need people who are, I think we're seeing vulnerability, authenticity, like kindness kind of rising up as well to kind of couple that warmth a bit. But it'll be so super interesting to kind of see these skills continue to evolve. But that's definitely work I spend a lot of time thinking about and helping people with.
Interesting. Very interesting. I agree with you. I think it's going to shift, especially. I hadn't really thought about it, and that's why I love this conversation and these types of conversations because you have such a different perspective having worked in corporate. That was something I never did. I never did that. So it's super cool hearing that, and the challenges that people face there are completely different, and leadership there, is just different, right? So super cool, super interesting. But warmth, yeah, I feel like the ability, and to me that basically just means like the ability to set the mood and create like a safe space. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where people can like feel like they're comfortable so they can learn and grow. But one thing a friend of mine posted a while back, he was asking like what makes a life coach great, and what I said was that the ability to um, be in a place where your client is crying and then in the next sentence be able to make them laugh, and like
Mhm.
that type of warmth of like we're here and it's good and like we're in this, you know what I mean, like a chapter of my book, like it's like the Fellowship of the Ring, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
it's a genuine warmth, and that's
yeah.
that's like a concept we use a lot, like genuine caring, genuine warmth. And people always say, like, well, why do you put genuine in front of it? And I always say because somebody could get up at work every day and pretend that they're nice or pretend that they're caring,
Right,
but
the intent, right?
yeah, you really need the genuine piece of it where you're really caring about someone. You're not just like asking them, hey, how is the situation at home when you have your 3 kids running around while you're trying to do your work on a Zoom call, right?
Right.
It's you actually care about that person's experience and can step into it and have empathy for it and figure out how to support
So powerful. And so obviously like lots of things changing for you, like you said. I mean, you've gotten tons of new work, you're bringing out all these new products. What are some of the things that you're coming up with now in the next few months or the next year that you're most excited about?
Yeah, I'm super excited about this work I'm doing in wellness. So for the first time ever, I'm offering a stress management coaching program for executives. I created my own stress assessment. I'm a certified assessment writer, so it comes with like a very custom created assessment that I made. It shows you how stress is impacting you showing up in the workplace, and there's 4 different ways, and the assessment kind of gives you your rating in each of those 4 categories. And then through the coaching program, we actually will help you figure out how to decrease your stress, work, and kind of show up better in those 4 areas, and then give you practical tools. And along with that, I've created some wellness education programs. So there's $2 billion spent a year in wellness in the Fortune 100 space with companies, but only 5% of that has been spent on wellness education. I always say it's all kind of been spent on putting kale in the cafeteria.
Huh.
And my work is really focused at increasing that 5% and helping companies invest in how to actually educate people with the skills to have so that they can have a more and better wellness experience for themselves as a leader, but for their teams too. So
Right.
lots of exciting work there. And
And ultimately a better culture.
yeah, ultimately a better
Tying it all
culture.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. I freaking love that. So thorough. Such a thorough person. I think that's just amazing.
Thank you. I'm super excited about those. And then some work in inclusion and belonging, because, and I can just share for myself, like I've always kind of struggled in life, like feeling I don't always belong. And so work for me, I feel like I fit in pretty well at work, which is great. But there's a lot of people who don't feel that way. And I think everybody should come to work and feel their best and feel that they can contribute and have a voice. So the work I've been doing is specifically for leaders, to create teams that have a more inclusive environment. I created like a conversation series and a skill series where leaders host monthly conversations or skill sessions with their team to show their investment into inclusion and go on the journey with their team members. And really excited about that work, and just very excited to see people having a different kind of conversation around the stuff that matters to people and can help make people's work experience a little bit more fulfilling and more wonderful for them.
Wow. That is super, super neat. So many different ideas flowing, but that are not no longer ideas, or these are real creations of yours, especially everything with the wellness education. I think that's so cool. And then also, how the heck did you get certified to I should say, I don't even, I mean, that's, how did you even think about what to create for a stress test, like an exam like that? That's one of those, that's pretzels, M&Ms, or
Right? I wish it was that. I made the commitment when I left corporate America because stress was really killing me. Like I was having really personal problems related to my cortisol levels and my health related to stress management. And so I made a commitment when I opened the company that I would create a product line one day for people who felt like me. And then in the past set of years, I've gone back to get some education at Duke University in their stress and health education for executives. And I got some certifications there, and really have just spent a ton of time reading, learning, educating myself, working with wellness professionals, investing in my own wellness, and figuring out how can I help these people who I know feel like I felt every day. And the sad thing is, if I kept going in that journey, I probably wouldn't have lived very long. Like I probably would have a shorter lifespan. I probably wouldn't get to see my own dreams come to fruition. And I don't want that for those people. I don't want people to be sick and unhealthy and depressed or sad or whatever they're feeling as a result of that stress. So the wellness work is very important to my heart because it is there for people that I know need it. And I hope I can get it out to as many people who might need it in the coming years.
Kristin, that is amazing. I'm sure if you ever do decide to go hard on social media, you're going to have a lot of people that are tuning in for your messages because you got plenty of them and they're all great. So shout
Well,
out
if
to
anybody
you.
listening to the podcast today wants to help me figure out how to do any of that, I'm all ears.
Right. And I know you mentioned earlier, like if people did want to get in contact with you, whatever, any places that you feel comfortable with, Kristin, you can feel free to let me know and I'll put them in the bio, or you can share.
Yeah, they can reach out anyway. So I have my website has leadersadvice.org has a link. You can message me. Graham can share my email with all of you. You can email me if you like and reach out anytime. I'm happy to help anyone.
1000%. And Kristin, my last question for you is on the book of life, right? What would you call this chapter of your life and why?
Oh gosh. Isn't every chapter of our life like titled learning about myself? No, I would say this chapter of my life would be called Inner Reflections During a Pandemic.
There we go.
Yes. And my chapter would be about, or I don't know, it's a tie between that and the year that I started to be more of myself.
Yeah, I love that, Kristin. Thank
Good
you so
question.
much. Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for your message and just so much insight and like some awesome takeaways about coaching and business and creativity, and just touched on so many cool topics. Again, peeps, you can tell why the first time we chatted it was for like 8 hours. We had a lot to chat about, right? So, Kristin, do you feel if there's anything else you feel called to share or say or connect with the audience in any way, shape, or form, feel free to.
No, I just want to say thank you. It's always an honor to be asked to be in anyone's forum. For those of you listening, if you've actually made it this far, that's amazing because I can be quite boring, but I appreciate you
No.
sticking around. And I just wish you all the best. It's been a hard year for everybody. So I wish everybody great blessings heading into this end of year, beginning of next year. And don't be afraid to live your life as big and as full as you can, because together, if we're all doing that, we can support each other to accomplish amazing things. So super grateful to know you, Graham. Grateful to be part of this today, and can't wait to hear all the amazing stuff you're doing with your people.
1000%, Kristin. Thank you so much, peeps. Check out Kristin. She's so amazing. Just so many cool ideas on how to live your life, how to create a business and take a vision and make it real, and then how to build amazing products and things that other people can use to grow themselves. And there's just so much cool stuff in there. And one of the first things she says was intellectual curiosity. And when I'm listening to all the things you're doing, Kristin, I got tons of it, because like this is just so interesting the way you're like piecing all this stuff together. So peeps, definitely follow Kristin in some way, shape, or form. And if you feel called to get in contact with her, I know she's someone who will definitely create time to do that. So thanks so much, Kristin. Appreciate you. Much love always. And peace, peace.